A number of years ago, I did a tutorial video on how to laser engrave engravable plastics. In that video, I concentrated on how to do front engraving on that plastic. Over the years, I've had a number of people ask me how to do reverse engraving on the engravable plastics. And so today I'm going to show you how to do that. It's actually pretty simple. It's almost the same as using as how we would engrave the front engravable plastics, with a couple of different caveats that we need to consider when we're actually engraving this product. As you can see from this sample here, hopefully you can see that this is the proper way to laser engrave reverse material. I've got no streaks in here, I've got no plastic bits, I've got no ridges. It's almost looks like it's been silk screened on the material itself. And this is really, really easy to get. It just takes a little bit of practice and knowing the proper steps to take to be able to do it. So let's get on with the video and let's take a look at how to do reverse engravable material. Today I'm going to laser engrave some silver reverse material, and I'm going to put in the red logo, and I'll paint that in. Material I'm using is 1/16 thickness. You'll notice that we've got a silver front here, and it's masked. And you'll notice that you can kind of almost see kind of a clear finish through it. This is a matte finish, not a gloss finish. So again, if you're sort of, the gloss is nice because then you get a really nice bright sign, but the problem is that sometimes you get scratches and then it's very easy to see. So I tend to be a bit more of a matte user than I am a gloss user, but again, it just really depends on your choice. In the old days, what we used to normally do is we'd print on one side, and that side would indicate that that was the engraving side, but we don't do that anymore. So what we normally do, you'll see you got the silver side here, and you've got a black side here, and you'll notice that the QR code and the data label here is on the side that's going to laser. And it's fairly straightforward because if I take this piece of clear coating off here, you'll notice that I've got a matte finish on here and there's no acrylic here. So what you've got when you're looking at reverse material is you've got material where you've got a piece of clear extruded plastic, which is acrylic based. And what you've got is you've got on the back side, they put the silver coating on first, the colored on first, and then they put the black on after. Okay, so if we were doing laser engrave on this side here, we'd actually be going through the clear acrylic. So we want to engrave on the back side. And again, we can do that by removing this material, and then all we really need to do is get through the black here and the silver, and then what we'll do is we'll end up having a clear engraving area that now we can paint. It's a little bit, we do get some people that have some issues, trying to figure it out and everything like that. But it's fairly straightforward, and once you do it a couple of times, it's fairly easy to sort of recognize, your materials. Even if you've got a black on black, it's normally pretty easy to distinguish it because, again, like I said, on the back is a matte finish, and then on the front is sort of a gloss acrylic style finish. The black is nice because what happens with the black is that once we paint it, then the light doesn't shine through as clear, which is nice for a lot of times you put this stuff up on a wall or on a door. So we really don't have any light coming from the back, but again, sometimes people do have signs and there maybe be some light would maybe be going through this, and having the black there protects any of that light coming through. The other thing to remember, and we try to train our customer service reps when they're taking orders, and I've seen this happen sometimes, is that you cannot put adhesive on this material and laser engrave it. Okay, so we'll get people that'll call us up and they'll say, well, I want some reverse material and I want adhesive on it. So then we're going to say, what are you using it for? Because sometimes they'll say they're engraving the back, and you're going to say, well, you can't have the adhesive on there and engrave through the adhesive. You want to engrave through the reverse material first, and then you want to put the adhesive on second. And people are going to say, well, we don't want to send that back to you. And we say, well, we do sell 12 by 24 sheets at Trotec here in Canada and the US and Europe too. Again, there's other suppliers in the industry that will supply this material. But again, I'll have people use the 3M adhesive. So they'll laser engrave this first, paint it, and then they'll put the adhesive on after. You know, sometimes people will use reverse material like this and they'll put vinyl letters on it. And then again, that's fine. If you want to put adhesive on the back, then you're good to go that way. But we always like to try to make sure that when we're talking to people that they understand that you can't put the adhesive on and then engrave through the adhesive into the paint and without having issues. Okay? So if you are looking to stick this somewhere, then I suggest you use the adhesive as a separate process and put that on after you've actually painted the material. In today's video, I'm going to be using just a spray paint. It's designed for plastic items. Again, the problem that we have with this type of paint is that to keep this paint relatively easy to spray, then there's some sort of a Varsol type additive that's in here to try to keep this fine, so that when we spray it, nothing's getting clogged up and everything's going through the nozzle. The problem with that petroleum-based additive is that it will eat away at the back of the plastic if you're not careful. Okay, and I'll see a lot of people that will laser engrave these signs and they'll use too much power, and then what they'll do is they'll go and paint, and then they'll get spider cracking. So again, you've got to be careful when you laser engrave it that you don't use too much power, because then this will affect the stressed acrylic. And we don't want to put too much of this on here, because if we put too much paint on there, it's going to puddle, and again, it's going to eat away at the paint on the backside or on the acrylic. So again, what you're going to see is we don't want to use a lot of power here, and we just want to sort of get through that silver and black, and then we're going to paint it. You can use, we do sell in basically an acrylic-based paint. Again, this is from Johnson Plastics in the US. And works really well. The problem with this is it's fairly expensive. So again, if I was doing a lot of reverse engraved signs, I probably wouldn't want to use this, because it is expensive paint to buy. And then again, you've got to put it on. You got to put it on there, and you got to take a brush with it or a squeegee or something, and then paint it. Again, what paint you use, it really isn't really that big of a deal. I like the spray paint because I can do it relatively quickly, and I can cover a lot of area, and it's cheap. And if you go to the Home Depot or one of your home improvement type companies or a paint store, you're going to find a lot of these types of colors that are available. And the reason that we use the reverse material is because we do have a lot of customers that want something other than a one color on another color sign. So somebody's going to come to you and say, well, I want red, but I also want blue and green. Well, if they want something like that, then reverse is really the best way to do it. The other thing, the nice thing about reverse material that I like too, is the fact that it's tamper-proof. So again, it could go on a wall. If somebody wants to scrape away at it with a knife or a set of keys or something like that, they got to go all the way through the acrylic to get to the paint in the back. So again, reverse material typically stops them from doing that. So again, it gives you a lot of protection when it comes to that. So again, just use some basic spray paint. I tend to find that's the best. You can use this if you want, or again, if you want to go to a paint store and buy buy some. Sometimes people go buy like the enamel paint in a can, and they'll spread it on with a foam brush or something like that. It doesn't really matter. what you do. The only other thing that sometimes what I'll do, I didn't do it on the back of this one here, but what some people will do also to protect this from the light shining through is you may want to give it a second coat of black. Or I've seen people put vinyl on there or some sort of a sticky item on the back here. I'm normally, if I do run into that issue, I'll just put a second coat of black on here. There's lots of times where when you're doing a 3 or 4 color job, again, you're going to be, one color on top of another color on top of another color. Maybe I'll do a separate video on doing that because that gets to be a little bit more in depth on what to do. But I'll keep this hopefully relatively short for you. So I've got Ruby open and I've got my job all set up here ready to go. You notice that I'm using the logo Trotec. I like to use this to test stuff because again, I like to use wider characters because if I'm going to have any issues with painting or anything, it's going to be noticeable more on the wider characters. I could use some small text and everything, but again, I typically like to use the wide characters. I've got a cut line here, so I'm going to engrave this. You'll notice that it's around 8 inches long by 1.2 inches tall, and basically that'll give me a half decent test for the material that we're going to be working with. I'm going to go over to the material setting here. You'll notice that I've got the Troglass Reverse 1/16 selected here. That's the material that I've designed. Again, as I've mentioned before, nobody rely, please, on what the manufacturer says, because typically anytime I deal with manufacturer settings, they're normally wrong. And I've always suggesting that people do the testing themselves so they get this put down properly, and you're not sort of relying somebody else, because a lot of times they may not be doing things right, and I would prefer that you do them yourself. So if I go here to the material setting, you can see that I selected the Troglass Reverse material. A couple things here just to notice. If I move this up here, you notice that I got 70 power, 100 speed. I got a CO2. I'm going to keep the frequency default. Quality is off. You notice here that my Z offset, which I talked about in the original video is at 0.09. Now, this is the most important thing you can do. The problem is if you're not out of focus when you're laser engraving acrylic, what ends up happening is you're going to get some white dust there. And you're going to be getting, the problem with the white dust is that you're not going to be able to get it out of there, and then when you spray paint the color in there, you're going to have the white dust that's going to affect your engraving. So again, I always tell people to go 0.09. This will take the machine out of focus. It will melt the material. It is extruded, so you don't get as much dust anyways, but when you're out of focus, you get a clear engraving. And again, this is the most important thing you can do, is get clear acrylic or get clear engraving so that we don't have any dust. You'll also notice that some people might say, well, your power and speed settings are too low. Well, I can tell you right now that this is probably maybe a little bit too high, but I'm going to do it this way. I normally do not want to go any more than I can get away with when I laser engrave plastic. Again, if I use too much power, then things start to warp, and I have problems that way. The other problem is is on acrylic type based product, you're going to get ridges, and the ridges are going to affect the spray paint, so that people are going to maybe see them. So again, we do not want to go very deep in the material. That is the most important thing that you can do. Okay, so I don't want to go deep in here, and I want to go out of focus. Okay, so those two settings are set up, and I would normally maybe use high quality. Now, the reason for high quality here, as you can see on the screen here, is that if I don't have high quality on, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get lines, different lines in the tops of the T's here, as opposed to the main body here. And a lot of times that's because the machine is only working in a small area and it doesn't laser engrave, and then when you paint it, or even when you're front engraving, it's going to look funny. So we put high quality mode on, and what that forces the machine to do is to go from the T all the way to the end of the C here, even though there's nothing here, and it takes a bit longer, but the engraving is going to be better, is going to be more consistent. So again, I like to put the high quality on. In the cutting, the other thing here is I've turned off the air assist. Please do not run the air assist in engraving mode. Okay? You do not want to put it on. We want to turn it off. Okay? So turn it off. Make sure that it's not on, because again, if it's on, it's going to cause the dust to blow all over the place, and that's not good. In terms of our cutting, there's really nothing here that I have to do for cutting, other than just to make sure that I got my power and speed set properly. I'm not going to tape this material down like I did in the previous video, because again, I've got to cut all the way through on this type of material because it's acrylic. Because if I don't go all the way through, when I try to snap it, I'm going to probably have some issues on the edge. So normally, when I'm going with the Trolle's material, reverse material, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all the way through. I typically will cut on the solid table if I feel that there's going to be an issue with warping. It's pretty easy to clean this stuff off the solid table. If you're going to put it on a cutting table, then again, you're going to want to make sure that everything's taped down and you don't get any bowing or anything like that. Bowing is going to cause some issues for you. So now that we've got the job set up, all we need to do is do a horizontal flip. And we need to do this because we need to see this in a reversed look, because it's coming from behind, so we need to invert the logo here. I'm going to do that by doing a horizontal flip. I'm going to click on the button right here. That's going to flip the Trotec. So when we laser engrave it from behind, we turn it over and look at it from the front, it'll look good. And I basically just need to send that to the laser machine. I say push the laser. And our job is ready to go. Just get rid of these other ones here. And we're ready to go. And now I can run it. And if I take this out, you'll notice that you can see my fingers in the background here. Now if I turn, you'll also notice here there's no difference in engraving here than there is in the body. And that's because of the quality mode. So if I take this and if I peel this corner off a little bit, just so you can see how clear my finger is on the back. So this is almost like it was clear acrylic that we were working with. There's a little bit here, but don't forget this is a matte finish material, not a gloss finish. But you know what, guys? It doesn't get any better than that. Okay? So I'm going to take this, it's back on again, and then we'll take it over and we'll spray paint it. So we've got it laid out on my cardboard here. This is the paint I'm going to use. Again, I'm using spray paint. I've seen people use wall paint. I've seen them use barbecue black paint. You know, it's just everything. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you paint it with, as long as you test it, you get what you want, and then you can just work with that. So I'm just doing something that's easy that we can put on. So again, I'm just going to go over to the material. I'm just going to get a test going here, and then we're just going to basically just do some nice easy spray here, and you can come back in a couple of strokes and we're good to go, and let that dry, and then we'll come back to it. I've let it dry for a couple of minutes, so again we can just take that off, and then again you can see that I've got a really nice image here. And if I take the coating off, let's take the coating off. you'll notice that we're good to go. Again, you're going to have a little bit of translucency there from the light coming through. And again, if, like I told you before, it's going to be on it's going to be on a wall like that. So that's really, it's going to be nice and dark, and you're not going to have any light going through. But again, if you were worried about it, then you could just put a secondary coat of black on the back here, or just put, so I've seen people put black vinyl or black sticker type material on there just to sort of keep the light from shining through. But again, like I said, it's really, really simple to do this as long as you follow the proper steps for doing this. Make sure that you're not using too much power, make sure you're out of focus, and really the rest is fairly straightforward. But again, those are two things that I do to make sure that we're good to go. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Hopefully you learned something today. As you can see with what I've done, it's not that hard to do the reverse material with the paint inside it for getting a different color. It's just really a matter of making sure that we're out of focus and we're not using too much power. Because if you use too much power, you're going to be in a bad spot, and if you're in focus, you're going to get the white dust, which again is going to affect the paint, and we may have some blobs, we may have some inconsistencies there. So make sure that you use those two steps, and you'll get a lot better end product that you can give to your customer. Not hard to do, but again, very rewarding when we can do a sign and it looks really good. So thanks a lot for watching. Leave some comments in the videos. I'm sure you will. I'm sure people will be talking about different paints they use and everything like that. And again, if you want to buy the material, Trotec sells it. But again, it's available from us in Canada, us in the US, Europe, but there's lots of other suppliers of the material too. But again, it works really well. So start practicing, and we'll see you in the next video.